The rain pounded the streets of San Francisco, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the wail of distant sirens. In a dimly lit alley off Mission Street, Caleb Foster pressed himself against a brick wall, heart hammering as blue and red lights flashed closer. His boyfriend, Ethan Caldwell, gripped his hand, their fingers slick with sweat and fear, whispering, "We can't get caught, Cal. Not like this." It was 2015, and though the world was changing, the weight of judgment still crushed them. Caleb, 20, with curly brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses, had always been the cautious one, a barista with dreams of opening his own cafe. Ethan, also 20, with his sharp jawline and restless energy, was a street artist, his murals splashing color across the city's gray corners. They'd been together for 2 years, their love a quiet rebellion against a world that didn't always understand. But tonight, their secret was unraveling. A tip to the police, likely from a nosy neighbor who'd seen them kiss too openly at a pride event, had led to a raid on the underground queer club where they'd been dancing. "Go," Ethan hissed, shoving Caleb toward a rusted fire escape. "I'll distract them." Caleb's stomach twisted. He wanted to argue, to stay, but Ethan's fierce glare silenced him. "I love you," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking, before sprinting toward the flashing lights. Caleb scrambled up the ladder, his heart splintering as he heard Ethan's voice rise, defiant, drawing the cops away. By the time Caleb reached the rooftop, Ethan was gone, swallowed by the chaos below. The next morning, Caleb waited at their usual spot, a bench by Ocean Beach, where they'd shared coffee and dreams. Ethan never showed. Days turned into weeks, and Caleb's texts went unanswered. Rumors swirled. Ethan had been arrested, maybe deported, or worse, disowned by his conservative family in Texas and forced to leave. Caleb clung to hope, but each empty day carved a deeper wound. He'd lost his lover, his anchor, under the crushing weight of fear and pressure. Caleb threw himself into work at the Daily Grind, a cozy cafe in the Castro district. The smell of roasted coffee and the hum of conversation kept him grounded, but every rainbow flag outside the window reminded him of Ethan. He'd kept a sketch Ethan had drawn of them, a quick pencil outline of their hands intertwined, tucked into his wallet like a talisman. At night, alone in his cramped apartment, Caleb would trace the lines, wondering where Ethan was, if he was safe, if he still loved him. Months passed, and Caleb's life became a cycle of pouring lattes and fending off questions from well-meaning friends. "You'll find someone else," his coworker Maria said one day, wiping down the counter. Her dark eyes were kind, but Caleb shook his head. "It's not about finding someone else. It's about losing him." Maria sighed, squeezing his shoulder. She didn't know the full story, nobody did. Caleb couldn't bring himself to talk about that night, the guilt of running while Ethan faced the consequences. One evening, as Caleb locked up the cafe, a stranger approached. He was older, maybe 40, with a weathered face and a rainbow pin on his jacket. "You're Caleb, right?" the man asked, voice low. Caleb nodded, wary. "Ethan told me about you. I was at the club that night. He didn't get arrested, but he left. Said he had to protect you." The man handed Caleb a folded note, then vanished into the fog. Trembling, Caleb opened it. In Ethan's jagged handwriting, "I'm sorry, Cal. I had to go. I'll find you again. Promise." The words were a lifeline and a knife. Ethan was alive, but he'd chosen to leave. Why? To protect Caleb from what? The questions haunted him, but the note gave him purpose. He started saving every penny, dreaming of a cafe of his own, a place where people like him and Ethan could feel safe. He called it Haven, sketching plans for a cozy space with warm lights and walls covered in local art art that reminded him of Ethan's vibrant murals. By 2017, Caleb had scraped together enough to lease a small storefront in the Mission District. Haven opened its doors, a beacon for the queer community and anyone seeking refuge. The walls were lined with paintings from local artists, and Caleb hung Ethan's sketch, now framed, behind the counter. Customers loved the place. Students, activists, couples holding hands without fear. But Caleb's heart remained heavy. Ethan's absence was a shadow, lingering in every quiet moment. One rainy afternoon, a customer named Jamie, a trans non-binary poet with bright purple hair, lingered at the counter. "You ever gonna tell me about that sketch?" they asked, nodding toward Ethan's drawing. Caleb smiled faintly. "It's a long story." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "I've got time." So Caleb told them about the club, the raid, Ethan's sacrifice. Jamie listened, their eyes soft. "Sounds like he loved you enough to let you go," they said. "But love like that, it doesn't just vanish." Their words stuck with Caleb, stirring hope he'd thought was dead. He started searching for Ethan online, scouring social media, art forums, anything. But Ethan Caldwell was a ghost, no trace, no posts, no murals. Caleb even contacted Ethan's sister in Texas, but she was cold, saying Ethan hadn't been home in years. The trail was cold, but Caleb refused to give up. He owed Ethan that much. That winter, Haven hosted its first open mic night. The cafe buzzed with energy. Poets, singers, and storytellers filling the air with raw emotion. Caleb stood at the back, watching the crowd, when a familiar figure slipped through the door. His breath caught. The man had Ethan's height, his broad shoulders, but his hair was shorter, his posture straighter. Caleb's heart raced as the man turned, revealing a face older but unmistakable. "Ethan." Their eyes met across the crowded room, and time collapsed. Ethan's expression was a storm of guilt, longing, and something new, resolve. He wore a police uniform, the badge glinting under the cafe's warm lights. Caleb's knees buckled. Ethan, a cop? The man who'd run from sirens, who'd sacrificed everything to protect him, was now one of them? Ethan approached, his steps hesitant. "Cal," he said, voice low, "can we talk?" Caleb nodded, unable to speak, and led him to a quiet corner. The crowd's chatter faded as Ethan explained. After that night, he'd been pressured by his family, threatened with disownment, and worse, told Caleb would be targeted if he stayed. So he left, joined the police academy in Seattle, hoping to change the system from within. "I never stopped loving you," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I came back to find you, to make things right." Caleb's emotions churned. Anger, relief, love. "You left me," he whispered. "You didn't trust me to fight with you." Ethan's eyes glistened. "I was scared. I thought I was saving you." They sat in silence, the weight of years between them. Then Caleb reached for Ethan's hand, the same hand he'd held in that alley. "You're here now," he said. "That's a start." The cafe's warm lights flickered as Caleb and Ethan sat in the corner, their hands inches apart on the table. The open mic night hummed around them, but Caleb barely heard the poet on stage. Ethan's uniform felt like a wall between them, its crisp lines a stark contrast to the wild, paint-splattered artist Caleb had loved. "Why a cop?" Caleb finally asked, his voice tight. "After everything, why join them?" Ethan leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "I saw what fear did to us, Cal. To you. I wanted to make sure no one else had to run like we did." He explained how he'd spent 3 years in Seattle, training, working the beat, and advocating for better treatment of queer communities. It wasn't easy, some colleagues resisted, but Ethan pushed, organizing sensitivity trainings, even coming out to his precinct. "I thought about you every day," he said. Every time I saw someone scared, I saw you in that alley. Caleb's throat tightened. He wanted to believe Ethan, but the betrayal still stung. You could have called, written, anything. Ethan nodded, guilt etched into his face. I was ashamed. I thought you'd moved on, that I'd only hurt you more by coming back. Caleb looked at the sketch behind the counter, their hands intertwined in pencil lines. I never moved on, he admitted. They talked until the cafe emptied, the last poet packing up their notebook. Ethan shared stories of his work, helping a trans teen escape an abusive home, stopping a hate crime in progress. Caleb saw glimpses of the old Ethan, the one who'd painted murals to give voice to the voiceless. But this Ethan was steadier, shaped by years of responsibility. Caleb shared too, about Haven, his dream of a safe space, how he'd built it from nothing. Ethan's eyes softened. You did it, Cal. You made something beautiful. As they stepped outside, the San Francisco fog wrapped around them, cool and heavy. Ethan hesitated, then pulled a small sketchbook from his pocket. I never stopped drawing, he said, flipping to a page of Caleb's face, rendered in soft charcoal. This got me through. Caleb's heart ached. He wanted to close the distance, to kiss Ethan like they used to, but the years apart held him back. Stay, Caleb said instead. Come to Haven tomorrow. Let's figure this out. Ethan nodded, a spark of hope in his eyes. The next day, Haven was packed with regulars, the air thick with coffee and laughter. Caleb kept glancing at the door, nerves twisting. When Ethan arrived, out of uniform in a simple jacket, he looked more like the boy Caleb had loved. They worked side by side, Ethan helping with orders, charming customers with his easy smile. Maria raised an eyebrow but said nothing, her grin approving. Jamie, the poet, whispered to Caleb, he's still got it bad for you. That evening, they walked to Dolores Park, the city sprawling below. Ethan opened up about the pressure he'd faced, his family's threats, the fear of losing Caleb to violence or scandal. I thought leaving was the only way to keep you safe, he said. Caleb stopped, turning to face him. You don't get to decide what's safe for me. We were supposed to face it together. Ethan's face crumpled. I know. I was wrong. They sat on a bench, the city lights twinkling. Caleb felt the old pull, the love that had never faded. But trust was fragile and he needed time. I want you in my life, Caleb said. But we can't just pick up where we left off. Ethan nodded, his hand brushing Caleb's. I'll wait, however long it takes. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became a fixture at Haven. He'd show up after his shifts, sketching in a corner or helping with events. The community embraced him, though some were wary of his badge. Caleb watched Ethan win them over, one conversation at a time, proving his commitment to change. They grew closer, sharing quiet moments, coffee at dawn, walks along the Embarcadero. But Caleb held back, afraid of being hurt again. One night, Haven hosted a fundraiser for a local queer youth shelter. Ethan volunteered, organizing security and even painting a mural on the cafe's back wall. A vibrant rainbow heart with the words, "Love wins," scrawled across it. Caleb watched, heart swelling. The old Ethan was still there, pouring his soul into art. At the event, Ethan took the mic, surprising everyone. I lost someone I loved because I was scared, he said, voice steady. I'm here to make sure no one else has to lose like that. The crowd cheered, and Caleb's eyes burned with pride. After they cleaned up together, the cafe quiet. You meant that, Caleb said, locking eyes with Ethan. Every word, Ethan replied. They stood close, the air charged. Caleb leaned in, their lips brushing, tentative but electric. It wasn't the past, but it was a beginning. The kiss lingered in Caleb's mind, a spark reigniting embers he'd thought were cold. But as he and Ethan rebuilt their connection, doubts crept in. Could he trust Ethan not to run again? Haven was thriving, but Caleb's heart was a battleground, love clashing with fear. Ethan sensed it, giving Caleb space while showing up consistently, his presence a quiet promise. One morning, a crisis hit. A queer teen named Riley, a regular at Haven, arrived shaken, their backpack torn. "My dad kicked me out," they whispered, eyes red. Caleb's instincts kicked in. He gave Riley a hot chocolate and a corner to rest, then called Ethan. Within an hour, Ethan was there, off duty, connecting Riley with a shelter he'd worked with. Watching Ethan kneel beside Riley, calm and reassuring, Caleb saw the man he'd become. Not just the artist, but a protector. Later, over coffee, Ethan opened up about his own struggles in the police force. "Some guys in my precinct still throw slurs," he admitted. "But I'm pushing back. I'm out, I'm visible, and I'm not hiding anymore." Caleb admired his courage but couldn't shake his unease. "What if you have to choose again?" he asked. "Between me and your job?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I choose you, Cal. Always." Their relationship deepened, but the past lingered. Caleb found himself checking Ethan's phone when he left it on the counter, half expecting a message that would pull him away again. Ethan noticed, his eyes sad but patient. "I'm not going anywhere," he said one night, catching Caleb's glance. "You can trust me." Caleb wanted to, but the wound was still raw. Haven's second anniversary brought a huge celebration. The cafe was packed, rainbow flags draped across the ceiling. Ethan helped organize, painting a new mural outside, a phoenix rising from flames, symbolizing resilience. Caleb watched him work, paint flecking his arms, and felt a rush of love. That night, as they danced to a local band, Ethan whispered, "I want to build a life with you." Caleb's heart raced, but he didn't reply, the weight of the past holding him silent. The next day, trouble arrived. A group of protesters gathered outside Haven, holding signs about traditional values. They targeted the cafe after Ethan's mural went viral online, drawing attention from conservative groups. Caleb's stomach dropped as he saw Ethan, in uniform, approach the crowd. Was this the moment he'd feared, Ethan choosing duty over him? But Ethan stood firm, protecting Haven's entrance, ensuring the protesters stayed peaceful. When he returned, sweaty and tense, he pulled Caleb aside. "I'm here for you," he said. "Not them." The incident shook Caleb, but it also clarified something. Ethan wasn't the scared boy who'd run. He was fighting for their community, for Caleb. That night, Caleb invited Ethan to his apartment. They talked until dawn, unraveling years of pain. "I'm scared to lose you again," Caleb admitted. Ethan took his hand. "You won't. I'm home." Their relationship grew steadier, but challenges remained. Ethan's job brought long hours, and Caleb struggled with the constant reminder of that night in 2015. One evening, a call from Ethan's precinct interrupted their dinner. A hate crime in the Tenderloin. Ethan had to go. Caleb nodded, but as Ethan left, old fears resurfaced. He spent the night pacing, wondering if this was their future. Ethan always running toward danger, Caleb always waiting. When Ethan returned at sunrise, exhausted but unharmed, Caleb broke. "I can't keep living like this," he said, voice shaking. "Waiting for you to disappear again." Ethan pulled him close. "I'm not disappearing, but I need you to trust me, Cal. Can you try?" Caleb nodded, tears falling. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Spring 2018 brought change. Caleb and Ethan moved in together, a small apartment overlooking the bay. It was a leap, boxes of Ethan's sketches mixed with Caleb's coffee grinders, their lives tangling in new ways. Haven remained their anchor, a place where they built community and faced challenges together. But the balance was delicate. Ethan's work as a cop pulled him into tense situations, while Caleb poured his energy into keeping Haven a sanctuary. One afternoon, a young couple, Alex and Sam, came to Haven seeking advice. They were planning to come out to their families but feared rejection. Caleb and Ethan sat with them, sharing their own story. "It's not easy," Ethan said, his hand on Caleb's knee. "But love is worth fighting for." The couple left with hope, and Caleb felt a surge of pride. They were making a difference together. Yet tension simmered. Ethan's precinct faced scrutiny after a controversial arrest at a Pride event. Ethan wasn't involved, but the backlash hit Haven. Online trolls targeted the cafe, calling it a cop hangout. Caleb defended Ethan publicly, but privately he worried. "What if they're right?" he asked one night. "What if you being here puts Haven at risk?" Ethan's face hardened. "I'm not the enemy, Cal. I'm trying to change things." The argument ended in silence, both too stubborn to yield. Weeks later, a breakthrough came. Ethan was promoted to a community liaison role, focusing on outreach to marginalized groups. He'd be less on the front lines, more in spaces like Haven. Caleb saw the relief in his eyes, the weight of conflict easing. They celebrated at the cafe, Ethan sketching a new mural idea on a napkin, a bridge connecting two hearts. Caleb laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. "You're such a sap," he teased. Ethan grinned. "Only for you." Their life together settled into a rhythm. Mornings were coffee and sketches. Evenings were Haven's events or quiet nights at home. But Caleb still carried scars. One night, a nightmare woke him. Ethan running into that alley, never coming back. He bolted upright, gasping. Ethan stirred, pulling him close. "I'm right here," he murmured. Caleb clung to him, the fear fading but never gone. Haven's third anniversary was a milestone. The cafe had become a hub, not just for the queer community but for anyone seeking acceptance. Ethan organized a mural festival, inviting artists to paint the block. The street buzzed with color and music, and Caleb felt a swell of gratitude. This was the life he'd dreamed of, even if it wasn't perfect. That night, Ethan took Caleb to the rooftop where they'd parted years ago. The city sparkled below, a canvas of light. "I've been carrying this for a while," Ethan said, pulling a ring from his pocket. Caleb's breath caught. It wasn't flashy, just a simple silver band, but it held a promise. "I left you once," Ethan said, voice thick. "I'll never do it again. Marry me, Cal." Tears streamed down Caleb's face as he nodded, unable to speak. They kissed, the city their witness, the past finally loosening its grip. Planning a wedding while running Haven was chaos, but Caleb and Ethan thrived in it. They chose a simple ceremony at Dolores Park, with Haven as the reception spot. Maria and Jamie helped plan, turning the cafe into a wonderland of fairy lights and rainbow banners. Caleb felt lighter than he had in years, but doubts still lingered. Could they really build a future on a foundation so fractured? The night before the wedding, Caleb found Ethan sketching at their kitchen table. "Nervous?" Ethan asked, catching his gaze. Caleb nodded. "What if we're moving too fast?" Ethan set down his pencil, taking Caleb's hands. "We've got time to figure it out. Together." His certainty anchored Caleb, and they fell asleep tangled in each other. The sketchbook opened to a drawing of their future. The wedding day dawned bright. Dolores Park was alive with friends, family, and Haven regulars. Riley, now thriving in a new home, read a poem they'd written for the couple. Ethan's sister, who'd softened over time, even showed up, a quiet gesture of reconciliation. As Caleb and Ethan exchanged vows, promising to stay through fear and pressure, the crowd cheered. At Haven, the reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and toasts. Ethan's mural glowed outside, a testament to their journey. Life as a married couple brought new challenges. Ethan's job still pulled him away, and Caleb struggled with Haven's growing demands. They argued sometimes about time, priorities, the weight of their past. But they always came back to each other, talking it out, rebuilding trust. Haven remained their heart, a place where they poured their love and values. One evening, a young man named Lucas came to Haven, scared and alone. He'd been outed at school, his parents refusing to speak to him. Caleb recognized the fear in his eyes, the same fear he'd felt years ago. He and Ethan sat with Lucas, offering support, connecting him with resources. As Lucas left, smiling faintly, Caleb turned to Ethan. "This is why we do this," he said. Ethan nodded, kissing his forehead. "We're making it better." Months later, Ethan proposed a new project, a youth art program at Haven, combining his love for art and community outreach. Caleb loved the idea, and they worked together, turning a back room into a studio. The program launched with a dozen teens, including Riley and Lucas, painting their stories on canvas. Caleb watched Ethan teach, his passion infectious, and felt a deep contentment. They weren't just surviving, they were building something lasting. Years passed, and Haven grew into a cornerstone of the Mission District. By 2025, it was more than a cafe, it was a movement. Caleb and Ethan expanded, opening a second location in Oakland, focused on queer youth mentorship. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on hard-won trust and shared dreams. They faced challenges, budget struggles, community pushback, Ethan's demanding job, but they faced them together. One spring evening, Haven hosted a gala for its 5th anniversary. The cafe was packed, the walls alive with art from their youth program. Ethan took the stage, his uniform traded for a paint-splattered jacket, a nod to his old self. 10 years ago, he said, voice steady, I ran from the person I loved most. I thought I was protecting him. But love isn't about running. It's about staying, fighting, building. He looked at Caleb, eyes shining. Thank you, Cal, for giving me a reason to stay. The crowd roared, and Caleb joined him, their hands clasping. They unveiled a new mural, a tree with rainbow branches, each leaf painted by a Haven youth. On a bench nearby, a wooden plaque read, Love Wins, carved by Ethan. It was their story, etched into the community they'd built. That night, as they cleaned up, Caleb pulled Ethan close. I was so angry when you left, he said, but you came back, and we made this. He gestured to the cafe, the art, the lingering laughter. Ethan smiled, brushing a curl from Caleb's forehead. We made us. Their journey wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, painful, real, but it was theirs. They'd faced fear, pressure, and loss, and emerged stronger, their love a beacon for others. Haven stood as proof. Love could survive, thrive, even under the heaviest pressure. And as they locked the cafe doors, hand in hand, Caleb knew they'd keep fighting for each other, for their community, for a world where no one had to run.